So I'd like to introduce our 7-person panel. Alan Poole. Nancy Hall. Chuck Hall. Rick Waters. And Dutch Martinick. So 6 people. All right. So here's a microphone. Speak into it, and there'll be a recording, and we're going to put that on YouTube, so we'll be able to see.
Well, since I'm the oldest and the loudest voice, you're going to start with me. I probably don't need that.
Okay.
So everyone hear me?
Yes.
For recording purposes, do we?
It would be more uniform if everyone used it.
Just hold it down here.
Just hold it.
Okay.
Well, it's probably better to hold it here. Right? Is that good sound?
Yeah.
I can hold it for you.
No. It doesn't make any difference when you hold it.
Or will you stand?
Yes. I won't be standing too long, just a little while. Age, you know.
And then if you could stand right here. So then he'll be able to see it. Okay?
I guess. Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, we thought it would be fun to have an evening of memories. Our evening of memories is going to start with the Callaghan-Willman. Before Davis Bike Club, we were much involved with the Callaghan-Willman. They came into the store one day and asked if we'd be willing to be a little bit of a co-sponsor. All right. So we said we'd be happy about it. We really would like to do that. What is your plans? Well, we'd like a little bit of finance and help if possible. Our plan at that time, we decided, would be for each time they bought something, they would put it in a box, their receipt in the box. At the end of the month or 2 months, they totaled up, and we would give them a check for 10%. That was the beginning of our association with the Callaghan's. They came in one day and they said, you know, we would really like to be more in the community. What could we do? They thought it would be nice if they could put a bulletin board in the shop announcing their rides, their activities, and invite the community to be part of it. They did. That became a very, very active board. And needless to say, they don't do anything too small. It was a big board. We became good friends with many of them. One day they decided they had an adventure they'd like to do. They came in and approached and asked again if we would be able to help them. Depends. They wanted to do this thing called 200-mile ride.
Oh.
I said, I'm not sure if you guys been drinking, but we agreed that we would do the 200-mile ride and help them. Our job was to be the sweep. We would go at the end of the ride, bringing in any of the riders that couldn't ride or assist them coming in. On the way out, and I believe it was around Esparto area, there was a lone rider sitting to the road riding his bike. We stopped and asked if we could be assisted with them, and they said yes. We chatted a few minutes, and I said, what do you think about maybe resting a while? The other riders are probably about 20 miles back. We'll come back to you, meet with you, and see if you want to finish the ride, or if you would like to go to what we call sag in. Our little van had cookies and candy and water. That was a health group van. They asked if, we went ahead and got the rider started back. We came back to the rider. They stopped and we talked. He asked if he would like to go. He thought it would be good. That rider was Ed Delano, Foxy Grandpa.
No.
Now, I think Jeff would like to tell you about the second ride.
About which part?
Your second DC. You know, 200 mile up the road.
Let me say, first of all, Helen helped me out of jam one time. I think this is very important. I was... I'm going to say this anyway. Anyway, I was Foxy Falls Century. We had all the sags ready to go. It was Friday. I was feeling good. My crew, everybody was going great. Helen called me and said, we didn't have permits, insurance, any of that stuff. So Helen called me and said, our ride has been shut down. We cannot go on Saturday. We didn't get a permit from, I don't know, Napa Solano. Well, we didn't know what a permit was. I couldn't get off work on Friday. Helen took the bull by the horns and did it all. She stood up. But anyway, it all started, we were out in front of B&L, and I guess you can tell this part. They wanted a bike club to go year round, because the Cali women, you know, they kind of dispersed in the summer. And so Dick, Nancy, and I stood out in front of B&L, a couple other people, and said, let's start a club. And that's where we are today.
What year was that, Jeff?
74? I don't know, Helen would know.
What's that?
What year was that?
What year was that?
I'm sorry, it was in maybe early 70, around 70, 71.
Yeah. And then we decided, we got together and said, this club needs at least one igloo. We bought one igloo. And then after the DC every year, we had to store stuff. Now in those days, we did not have a shed. We ran it up a ramp. She had a conveyor belt.
We didn't have a ramp, we were downstairs with
Yeah.
them all.
We ran all the cookies and all that stuff upstairs after DC.
The B&L
At B&L Bike Shop. So we stored up there. We did not have that. So anyway, we would get together, John McElrath, who isn't here now, and Dick and Nancy and I would get together over his house and say, let's have a ride list. And we'd make up rides. And also the Foxy Fall was, when it first started cooking, was over a Coleman stove with a couple of pots over here. And I don't know, we started the DC, we just took over the DC from the Cali Wheelman, and Helen can tell you why on that one.
Dick, you know that one.
Well,
I learned it for the first time, didn't I?
Remember, we have been rehearsed a little bit, but not much. And this is memories, and some of our memories are a little foggy. I will tell you that Lee and I retired 1991, October 19th at 12:03. True story. You want to tell
okay, well, so the DC was started by the Cali Wheelman, as Helen mentioned, and it went there with them for a few years. And then my memory of this, and Dutch may know better, was that the university was changing their program as far as clubs, and the Cali Wheelman was considered a club of the university. And so they decided that what they were going to do was they were going to empty the treasury at the end of the school year and then maybe give them back money for the next year. Well, the Double Century had run by getting a bunch of money, but then they needed it as seed money for the next year. And so by taking all the money away, that was going to mean that there would be no seed money to start the DC or to start planning for the DC. And so through some sleight of hand, the treasury of the Cali Wheelman got, at least the DC part, got transferred to the Davis Bike Club. And then the Davis Bike Club took over as running the DC. And so, and that's history. You want to talk a little more? One of the things that Helen and Lee starting B&L Bike Shop, which hopefully she'll talk a little more about, and which is, I don't
50
think
years
it was
old.
50, the 50th anniversary of B&L Bike Shop is going to be celebrated this August. So Beth was going to try to be here. And they're going to try to close down 3rd Street and do a bunch of things. That's still in the works. But So the history of B&L Bike Shop, the Cal Aggie Wheelman, the Davis Bike Club, and the DC kind of all intermingles at the beginning. So why don't you talk a little bit about the DC's stuff?
Yeah, well, I've got a website that I started going back to actually the early 60s. But I came here in Davis in 72 and pretty much rode around by myself until 76. And I ended up joining the Davis Bike Club toward the end of the year. I wasn't one of the first people, and then rode my first DC in 77. And I rode again in 78, 79, and 81. And but I have collected material from other people, and a lot of people have seen the site and had things. So if you have any specific questions about the first 10 or 12 years, I may have the data in here, I may not. But I do have one. In 79, I only rode 100 miles starting in January until the DC, and I don't advise it. 21 hours and 19 minutes. So anyway, but like I said, if you have any questions or something, maybe I may have the answer in here. I have a few finisher lists and that kind of data, so.
Like I said, I'm the oldest one. We were very, very blessed, I'll say, to be involved with the Davis Bike Club. They were more fun. We worked hard. Big group. I'll give you one of my really favorite. 1987. Somehow or another, I convinced a lady that if she would be co-chair of the double century, I'd be the other co-chair. That was rocking. Not only was she a co-chair, I really and truly think she did it all. And she can still do it all. That was so wonderful, Robin. Thank you. That year I was voted to be the volunteer of the year with the American what is it called? There goes my memory, and it does come and go once in a while. Also, they had a group, supposedly, that was very active at one of the rail stops, according to the paper. Topless. Honestly, we didn't see it, did we, Robert? 1987. We took the time to make a few notes to review some of the things we've done in the past. Our first president was a high school student, or we wouldn't call it a president, Dave Walters. Our first ambitious thing that we really wanted to do was maybe have a hostel here in Davis. We thought, wouldn't it be wonderful? Well, we decided we were going to approach the university and see if possibly we could use one of the dorms for summer hostel. Sorry, they're very busy getting them ready for the next year. So that kind of ended our ambitious thing that we wanted to do. And then, as I said, we became part of the Cal Aggie Wheelman, and they had the race team that was doing wonderful things. Cal Aggie Wheelman was a race team intercollegiate, if I remember correctly. We had junior racers, we had all ages, young, old, probably Foxy Grandpa, if I'm not mistaken, or not, at least that age. It was unbelievable as the activities that had started developing with the Davis Bike Club here in town. Come on, you guys, it's your turn.
Nice jersey.
It's one of my favorites, and it's well worn.
Introduce yourself.
Nancy Hall. Betty Jane Polk and I were friends. Well, she was Davis Parent Nursery School teacher, and our son was in her class. So she and I got to know each other very well, and there was a lot of talk on the rides about, gee, we ought to have a tour, we ought to have a tour. And so there were lots of discussion. So Betty said, let's just get together. So she came over to my house and we sat down at the kitchen table with a California map. I think actually part of it's in that book. And we planned out a tour for 1981 from Davis to San Luis Obispo in a week. The cost was singles deposited $15, families $25. Beyond that, you paid 50 cents a night for your campsite fee, and you contributed food. And we brought the train back from San Luis Obispo for $31.50. So it was wonderful. We camped. We went to Napa. We went to the Vega Bay. Marin Headlands. The first year we slept in the bunkers, which were very noisy and scary. Biked across the bridge all the way to Santa Cruz. Then the next day it was Big Sur, and ended up in San Luis Obispo. It was a very successful tour. We had about 30 riders. Tim, I know you and Louie were there, just the two.
And Mary also.
And Mary also. Okay. The 3 kids. And then Eileen went the second year, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So in 1982, we basically did the same tour again, a couple of different stops, but, and we had about 40 people in that one. So it was a wonderful experience, and I have some old photo albums that are kind of falling apart, but if you want to peruse them, you can. Oh, Jeff, do you want to show our little shirt? We were so well organized that we made shirts. Jeff had a friend who helped him with the silk screen. And we came over to our backyard and...
Tim was the big instigator. This wasn't the day, sounds like the day before electricity, but you didn't go to Ink Monkey. You bought your screen, you made your screen. We did it in the back of the house. We hung them up on the clothesline. And this is what we did. Got the train, San Francisco, San Luis Obispo, and the date. And then later on, we had the bike across California. We only went once. We started in Gardnerville, Nevada, and rode our bikes to Davis, spent the night, got up the next day, and took our bikes to San Francisco, riding our bikes, not the ferry, but along through Vallejo and over to Marin County, and ended up, and it only went 1 year, but we were hoping it would go more, but that's the way it goes.
So
you want to talk about the family campouts or not? It's too complicated.
Early on, before this first tour, on Labor Day weekend for 2 years, I think, a group of young families with small children got their bikes, their bike trailers, their baby seats, their whatever, with the van from B&L Bike Shop, who also supported us on this with their van all the way to San Luis Obispo. So a group of probably 20 or 30 people would head up to Cache Creek, the mid-site, on Labor Day weekend, and we would bike up there and spend the weekend and then bike back to Davis. Some of the kids riding, some of them in little chairs. It was Sad Bicklewick.
Would you pronounce this?
This is Sad Bicklewick for the first annual Davis Bike Club Labor Day weekend camp out. That was
This was one of our younger riders, I think.
That was probably our son. So that's how touring began with Davis Bike Club. Who's next, Rick?
You want to talk about all the clothing?
All your
Brought the
shirts?
clothing?
Well, I don't know what to say. There's just, when you get up to leave, there's just a lot of t-shirts that I've saved for whatever, and they're all here, or most of them. And that's pretty much it. Oh, and I want to say Tim Johnson, who goes way back, on the 23rd DC, they had an award for people who had ridden from the bike club or Davis the most amount. Tim had, out of 23, he had ridden at 19, and I rode at 18. I didn't catch up with him until he retired, and then I quit shortly after. I don't know what to say. I guess we have a question and answer period. What?
His first DC. Talk about your first DC that you rode.
Mine wasn't part of it.
I want to hear that story.
I didn't come into the club until 5 or 6 years after these guys did. My car burned up one day over in Woodland about 2 weeks before the DC, and I bought a bicycle off of Helen and rode the Winters one time. And I heard about the DC. So I took off on it and made it to Clear Lake, and I took off with a pair of Levi's on and borrowed a pocket knife and cut the legs off of them. And when I got to Clear Lake, I had a flat and my hands wouldn't work and I couldn't fix the flat. And Dee just happened to show up because I told her to come up there and follow me from their home. You could have a private SAG back in the days. They stopped that after that. But I didn't make it that year, but the next year I did make it, and I made it for quite a few after that. I didn't keep account of how many I did. I did a few of them. I don't know. Me joining the bike club, and I say it was probably the luckiest thing I ever did. I had probably had more best friends out the bike club. Met more people that could do a lot of things. I ran a rest stop in Tobin this 2 weekends ago, and I was driving around the middle of the night in my car, and I fell off in a hole with one of my wheels, so I was stuck there and didn't have a phone to call in. So the next morning I was going to hitchhike to Oroville, and some guy just come walking out of the woods, and he says, Larry, are you Larry? And I said, yeah. He said, Dan Shadone called me and told me to come and see if I could help you. I've met a lot of people like that over the years in the club that were just so capable. And I couldn't mention all the people that I've met in the club. And I've had probably 30 best friends in the club. You know, I'm pretty famous for not having best friends very long. I say something. But the bike club is an awful nice thing. And I don't know. I just had a good time. So, and Dee and I have worked a lot on things, and Dee has always been my helper to help me do whatever we did. Didn't forget you, huh? Helen, take over again.
March Madness.
I thought it'd be a good time to mention Mark McGann. Many of you remember Mark. Mark did the Delta Century on many different types of vehicles. He started out with a paperboy type bike. He actually finished. Then he had a high wheeler. He had a bicycle with a trailer that two of them worked. One would ride the bike, one would ride in the trailer. Then they'd switch off. So Mark was unbelievable. He was a wonderful young man. This was a high school student, a local family. In fact, his dad was the local judge here in town. Mark, I was amazed at some of the things he'd come up, and I'd say, again, unbelievable that someone could possibly think of riding 200 miles with this type of equipment. Mark was actually put on a motorcycle ride the day before one of the Double Century rides. His mother still worked, came out to help us that evening of the Double Century. There's so many memories. It's difficult to come up with everything. Probably some of you might want to stand up and ask a question and see if we do remember or if it's accurate. Some of the things may not even be quite as what we remember. I remember that Barry and someone I think wrote Across America.
Jerry Wiley.
Jerry Wiley. We have a book that he wrote about biking across America. We have another one of the students that decided that we needed to know where to ride your bike. Randall Braun, he did a book, a beautiful book, done a book about all the areas, Solano, different areas to go ride your bike. I need to look at more of my notes here. I think Nancy might remember the trip that they planned to go to Paris. Did you hear that, Nancy?
I didn't get to go to Paris. Our kids were the wrong
Did
age.
you go?
Very
You
good.
want to tell about the Paris? This is one of the activities at the Davis Bike Club.
Yeah, we went to, in 1987, and it was my fault because I was the one that wanted to do it. And the club kind of went along and decided they'd go to Europe on a tour. And while they were there, I'd do Parasite, Dare and Dodge. And so I think Betty had a lot to do with the planning, and Helen helped a lot, and it was a really good trip. And I think it was probably mine and Dee's best trip we ever had. We rode across Holland and Germany and France, and I think that was about it.
When did the ultra-distance cycling get started? When did the randonnée stuff, the train for Paris,
There
Paris,
used to be
Paris
a
get
bike club
started?
in Berkeley, and I forgot what they were called. Do you remember what they were called? Anyhow, they were doing all the long distance stuff, and all the guys got old, just like the Davis Bike Club did. So they stopped doing it, and I kind of talked Jerry Peterson and Dan Shadong into starting it, and boy, when those two guys started, it took off like you wouldn't believe.
Can you tell you were about back to the Paris tour? Can you tell your Richard Hayes story?
Rich, we got thanks to Helen, Peugeot gave us a van while we were over there. Richard Hayes was driving the van one day and went around the corner to the right, and there was a cement pole there, and he ripped the door off the thing. Me and Richard took a pair of channel lock pliers and a sledgehammer and pounded the door back on. Richard has thought I was a pretty great guy ever since.
I wanted to say one more thing about Mark McGann. Probably you don't know this. He rode a unicycle on the DC one year. I passed him on the way out, and I finished and went home, went to bed. And I asked everyone the next day who I saw, did he finish? Did he finish? I don't know. I don't know. So we had to go up to Clear Lake and pick up some garbage, this friend of mine. So what do you know, we get up by Sparrow, and here's Mark McGann coming on the high-wheeler. He made it in 38 hours. And anyway, Mark was like that. And then he got home and said, let's write an article about this. There was a bicycling magazine called Bike World. I don't know if any of you've been around that long. And so we wrote an article. I took the pictures. We went on. We sent it to Bike World. They said, we'll be glad to publish it. Well, they were, but Bike World went belly up within a month. And he was an amazing athlete. Oh, here it is here. Anyway, I took the picture, but there's Mark McGann. I think the high-wheeler was a converted, unicycle was a converted...
It was a bone shaker.
Yeah, bone shaker, there's the word. Yeah, just like this, he had engineered it, so we put a seat on the back. Anyway, he had to walk down all the hills and maybe even walk some up, but he made it almost 40 hours. He was a character. I'm done.
I was just going to mention a little bit about the clothing, and I don't know how the camera's going to work on this, but we've got various pieces of clothing here. A couple of jerseys. This one's mine, and it's been through the washout times, and this is a much nicer one here. I'm not sure if this was the first jersey or it was one of the first anyways. But
The yellow
Do you want to hold it up?
okay. So Davis Bike Club and B&L on the bottom. And if that wasn't the first,
The yellow one with
I
the
don't
green.
oh,
Is it wool?
that one isn't. That one was the predecessor of current fabrics, whatever it was. These are wool. And so there's this one, which was one of the actual manufactured ones with Peugeot sewed in. And this is one that says Nancy on it, I think. And Davis Bike Club without the Peugeot. And so there are different versions of this, but it was decided that this would be the club's colors, the yellow and green or gold and green. And this was the first piece of non-jersey or non-t-shirt that was made. This is a jacket with a hood. And It says Davis Bike Club in the same colors as the jersey. And this was designed as a riding thing, and you can see that now this is peeling off. This is mine, since then. That it was rubberized inside. You ride about a mile on this, and you don't want to ride anymore. When the DC was in its early days, we did decals that people could then take home and iron onto a t-shirt. And that probably is an actual printed one, but that is kind of what some of the decals look like.
What read what that says on it?
It says, Heart of California, double century, 1981, 200 miles in one day. And then, oh, it's on, that's what the Ocean Tour was printed on.
Same year, same year.
And so, my memory of the t-shirts and the way we now have the t-shirt kind of tradition is that the Highway Patrol, in all their infinite wisdom, wanted to be able to see drive up to a rest stop and know who was working at the rest stop immediately. And so they made us have yellow t-shirts that were printed with whatever we were doing for that year. So, but that's how they, at least my memory is that's how they were started. Robin?
For many years, the workers' t-shirts were yellow, gold, just after a while, it's like, I can't deal with this anymore. But also on top row, right here was domestique. And somehow they just, after a while, I just got rid of it, yellow, gold. T-shirts are now a business with events. And we had decals, and if you wanted it, some of them were extremely simple. No one really, not many people used them. Now, the Heart of California, wasn't that based on a bank?
Going downtown, which is not
Right.
here.
Yes.
Yeah, Hart Federal Savings and Loans was one of the first sponsors of the club outside of being out, right?
And they also did the Sunday morning breakfast.
You mean Heart of California?
Yes.
The Heart of California was named when God came in with Heart Federal. They became one of our sponsors. And we somehow started calling the double century the Heart of California.
Right.
They-
And also, the DC was the double century, and then the morning after, there was a huge breakfast,
Right.
pancake breakfast, of which the bank was, all their boys came and cooking and serving and stuff.
The
And a lot of
breakfast-
stories were told, and we had most flats and all this kind of stuff.
We started out actually keeping record of the first person to come in and giving awards for the fastest riders. And we had to discontinue that. I believe it happened after Christie's death, that we really had to start watching how we worded everything. It was a ride, it was not a race. You could not have it. We were told that if we continued having it as a race, then they recommended that we not sponsor the Davis Bike Club along with Heart Federal. Heart Federal, our lawyers, our attorneys gave us advice that if the Davis Bike Club would incorporate, I hope I'm telling this correctly, that we could continue to sponsor and not be completely liable for everything that they were doing. The board that would be responsible. I'm probably going by the memories, and that could be a little fuzzy. But that's when Heart Federal decided that they would not continue, and we decided that we would continue. We had two bands. One was a race team band, and one was the touring band. The race team band was the Ford, I believe, and the Dodge became the touring club. They did many, many rides. The race team, I do believe we had, I said the other night, 400,000 miles. I think I exaggerated a little bit, but it did have, when we got rid of the van, well over 200,000 miles on it. That was, we really enjoyed. One of the nice things we did, we go up to Nevada City to watch the races every year. Lee and I got to bring back the swim team. That was kind of exciting for us. And then the other thing about one of the races, we had Greg LeMond as our guest speaker one year. So, Davis Bike Club hosted Greg LeMond. I don't know if we rented anyway. We had one of the rooms out on the campus. It was a big meeting. He did a beautiful job that evening. And Lee and I got to be the host dinner with Greg and his wife that evening. We've had lots and lots of memories over the years of so many fun things that the Davis Bike Club created that we got to be part of. Your turn?
Okay.
I'm done.
All right.
Or memories.
Go ahead.
Questions? You in the back, first one.
Thinking back to the beginning of the club, what was how many members did you have the first couple of years? And how quickly did the club grow?
Somewhere I came across something that it was in the early years. Well, it was fewer people than are in this room to start with. I do remember that.
Maybe fewer than this front row.
And at one point, one of these documents that I came across said it was like 125 members. And, well, my memory of one of the ways that the bike club actually grew was, and this, correct me if I'm wrong, but Helen would give a membership to the club to people who bought a bike, or a nice bike anyways, at her shop. And so, in my mind, that's really how the club grew kind of incrementally, or that's not the right word. Anyways, grew a lot. Because people would they'd have a free membership for a year, and some never did anything with it. But a lot of the people who were active, very active, that's how they started. And so that really grew. We've got, I think our official number is 500 and some right now. And it's been at that level for quite a few years. But a lot of people, I think, just kind of renew their membership and may not do anything with it. But I don't know. We used to try to figure out how many really active members we had and how many people we just had on the rolls. But I think it's stayed at about 500 for several years, and went up to about 125, I think, and then slowly grew from there to 500. Does that answer your question? Again, I'm talking about this stuff, and I'm realizing that there's other people here who know a lot more than I do about it. So, Diane?
Here's something that people always ask me. This is for Helen. What does B and L stand for?
Well, I thought maybe you'd ask that question. We decided we'd like to have the B under B in the phone book. That was a bicycle. Our partner's name was Brandon, last name was Brandon. And my last name is P, Pool. And we decided we did not want to be B and P. So we decided that we would use my husband's first name, B and L, and also big and little bicycles.
Russell?
This may be real minutiae, but does any of you know how it got to be called the Davis Bike Club as opposed to Cycling Club or Bicycling Club?
I was around when that decision was made, but Jeff, do you have a
I would say somebody suggested, and nobody would have another one. They said, okay.
There was a lot. There were a lot of different names suggested, and there was also a lot of different. Were also a lot of different names suggested for the newsletter, and
I know about that.
it's Rope and Spoke or something like
No,
that.
changing gears.
Spokes word.
Yeah.
And
We had a contest and I won it.
okay, no wonder he knows. Okay.
That's what it's
So
on.
changing gears is what it ended up to be. There were, I do remember a lot of discussions, but I don't remember what they were to get to the name. It was my memory of why we ended up with that name was that it was short and kind of punchy. And easy to remember and so on.
Yes.
Yeah, so I just have an anecdote here.
Okay.
So I grew up in North Vancouver in British Columbia, and after I left high school, I moved to Victoria and worked in a bike shop. And we used to read, at lunch, we'd read Bicycling magazine, and there was an article about the double century, and it just fascinating to me, you know, that this was 200 miles. I just couldn't imagine it. And Diane and I had met years before in Mexico. She lived in Colorado. Anyway, we were pen pals for many years, and one year I went touring in Britain and had it was hard to get a tandem back then, and I got a custom tandem frame built. And so Diane went to UC Davis. She transferred, this was grad school. She went from Colorado College to UC Davis. So I had a different address that I was sending letters to. You know, it was long before email. Right? And I said, "Oh, I've heard of Davis. You know, there's this big ride there, and you know, I'd like to maybe come down one year and ride it." And I guess it was the Christmas of '77. Diane sent me a Christmas card, and she said, "Well, you want to come down this year?" And I thought about it, and I went, yeah, that'd be cool. And I said, I just got this tandem, you know, I just put it together, and if you want to ride with me on the tandem. This was kind of the peak of my racing career, so I was really strong at the time. I said, I'll ride it anyway, but if you want to go on the tandem, you know, we'll do that. But I said, the prerequisite is that you have to ride at least 100 miles, so I know you can do that. And so I said, you know, there'll be a bike club there, you know, just go to the bike shop and join the club, and there'll be lots of rides. So anyways, Diane rode the Sierra Century, and I think it was 12 hours. She was like the last finisher, and we did the DC in 13 and a half. Anyway, that was, the DC was very prominent in kind of me relocating here.
What year was that?
78. That was 78, and then we got 79, so I went back to college in the summer of 79. Diane got me a job painting apartments. I was a frostback is the word, I think. So I was illegal. So anyway, and then we got married the next summer, and I moved to Davis. So we got married in '80, and yeah. So
John, was the Kaleki band over at the start?
Oh, that's another story.
Or was that 79?
I don't remember.
The first year I did it, the Kaleki band was over there at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I couldn't.
And they never came back.
I don't remember the band, but what I do remember is my first vision. And Mark McGann and I became very good friends. We played polo together and went mountain bike riding together. But my first recollection of McGann was riding his high-wheeler on the way to Pope Valley. And we were in a big group, maybe 15 or 18 of us. He just was waving, you know. And just like, yeah. So, and he got a very early start. He used to start way early.
You know, John let me tape an interview with him about Mark McGann, which is on my website, by the way.
Oh, by the way, Jack Kenward, who worked for Helen for, I don't know, wrote an article, and I have it at home if you want to email me, the history of the first 25 years of the Davis Bike Club or the DC? DC, yeah. Yeah, he wrote I don't know why he didn't distribute it, but I have it at home. I get it posted. The history, the first 25 years of DC.
That's probably on the website right here. That history of DC is probably on the website.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why don't you say out that website name right now? Your website name for the DC.
Website name.
VeloVecchio.com.
Yeah, Velo Vecchio.
Yeah, I've got an image of it here if you want to look at it. Learn how to spell it. But I don't know what. I see a couple of veteran DC writers here. Heard Tim Johnson.
Right there.
Tim, how many DCs have you written? 30. And Mark Tevitt, you first wrote in '72?
Mark did, yeah, we got the poster is hanging in my office. He was wearing a tennis cap.
Okay.
He was wearing a tennis hat and he was on a 10-speed Schwinn.
But just, Jim Boystein has like 48 now. He's going for 50.
Yeah.
Are there a complete, I did the double century on a bike I borrowed at the last minute, and in 1973, I think, and crashed into a mountain and did the last 140 bandage from head to toe. And then I went to the emergency room. My husband took me there, and I have no memory of it, but he said I screamed a lot when they took gravel out. And so I've done one double century, and I will never do it again, of course. But I'm wondering, and they have a special trophy made for me at that for the breakfast, which is lost in our garage somewhere. And who knows when it will surface, but I'm wondering if anyone has records. I thought only 3 women, other than the fast pro type, who finished, I thought only 3 women finished back then. Do you know? Do you have those kind of records?
I have a list at home.
From those early? Oh, good. I'd love to get a copy of that.
What year?
I've got too much stuff.
I think it was 73.
And it took you 24 hours?
I don't know.
And 21 and a half.
Dutch does have some of the finishing list on the website.
Well, it took me 20
How many people rode the DC those first few years? Was it 50? Was it 200? Was it?
The first one, I think there were 52, right? And I don't want to dwell on this, but they had 2 routes. They had up to Clear Lake and back, and they had a flat route. Oh, and majority of the people want to do the flat route because that's always easy, right? Well, it wasn't that easy. They went into a headwind going up and a headwind coming back to the flats. Very few people finished that, but the mountain people up to Clear Lake was the highest percentage of finishers.
Yeah. Here's a list of finishers.
Yeah, I have this at home too.
That second ride,
I guess you could look at this.
it went up to Chico area and turned around. As all of you know, quite often in May we have north wind. We had north wind. Honestly, it was, the flags were standing straight. The riders that went on the flatland, I don't think very many of them finished. It was terrible, but they thought, you know, there's going to be a plus. On the way home, you got it made. Guess what? Hard work wins. Many riders, they never came to another flat line.
Any other questions? For those of you who are standing up here and thought we couldn't do 20 minutes. Almost an hour.
Perfect timing.
Thank you. I didn't mean that to be the end. Jim?
Well, I'd like to just to say something about the guy that has kept me alive in this club, and that's Mr. Burdett, the legend. Yeah. When I retired the last time, it took me 3 times to get it right. I decided to ride across Nevada, and I asked Larry to go with me for obvious reasons. Larry calls me up the night before and says, "Are you going to bring toothpaste?" So I picked the time to start the day after I mailed my taxes in. Since I always owe, that was April 15th. Winter wasn't over in Nevada. So we had ridden about 80 miles and had stopped to rest beneath the shoe tree. And if you've ridden across Highway 50, you know where the shoe tree is. This car pulls in beside us. It's completely covered with ice. He can't open the doors on the right side of the car. And I said, "Larry, you think we should give this up for another day?" He says, "No way, we've come this far, we're going to go." So that ride was ride to a stop, get up the next morning and start up a hell of a pass. The first morning out of Austin, Nevada, at the top of the pass, I think it was 34 degrees and it was warming up to 33, 35. And I made it to the top all right, but I did not want to face that wind down. And I had a Sacramento, a Spud Troubleman was sagging for us. I said, "Jim, his name was Other Jim. I want to ride down." And Larry says, "Don't take this man down. He's not there. He's going to go down." And with Larry's encouragement and medical advice for a buddy of mine, Larry introduced him to the wonders of bag bomb. We finished the ride, and that's probably one of the highlights of my life, thanks to Larry.
I think Lee and I probably can really brag about the double century. We did it much faster than anybody that I know. We were kidnapped, or so to speak, during the day, taken to the Davis airport, put on an airplane, and they flew the double century route. We had lunch at Fairway. So now, for 2.5 hours, Lee and I did the double century. And the longest ride I've ever done is probably from here to Woodland.
I can tell you that year was in 1984 because that was the year I was chair of the DC. I remember that. So that was back when it wasn't the permanent chair. Robin has done a fantastic job for. Barry.
Were there other bike clubs in the Sacramento area besides Davis?
Yeah, the
Bike hikers.
Bike Hikers was active then, the Sacramento Wheelman. And in thinking about Russell's question, that was another reason Davis Wheelman was suggested, but since there's also a Cal Aggie Wheelman and a Sacramento Wheelman, that didn't work. So yeah, there were at least those two that were active touring clubs at the time, or back then. Linda.
I'd like to mention two people who aren't here if I can. Ralph Doney, who was
Oh,
the one
yeah.
who got me riding when I would go
Yeah.
out. There were Tuesday, Thursday morning rides. Before I went back to work, I'd go out and I can remember him saying, "You gotta get yourself some toe clips." And I did, toe clips. And Eleanor, who's the reason our family ended up doing it.
Eleanor just walked in.
Oh my goodness. Our daughters had Eleanor at Valley Oak School, and they were in awe of her riding the double century, and they were bound and determined they were going to do it. So we did.
Yeah, Eleanor got more than a few young people in the club by, I don't know if she required it as part of the classwork to ride. She definitely got a lot of people going. Eleanor, would you like to say something?
Well, I just have to say that I had a great deal of fun with the bike club back in those days. I was just thinking all the way over here. After the double century, we'd sit around and talk. And the last time I worked with Larry over at, where was it?
Cape.
No, it was in Sparta.
Sparta.
Yeah.
I worked a couple of days before, and all I could do over at the rest stop was sit. Talk about being done. Anyway, but I think that we've done done so much for the town and for bicycling that throughout the years, it's just been absolutely wonderful. And I know all of us who were in the bike club a lot and in the early years, we had a heck of a lot of fun camping and going to different places and doing all those kinds of things. And I remember when we went up to, where was it?
San Juan Islands?
395. Well, when, also the islands, the islands. We just had a great time. And I remember one time, Will, Eiley, and I were riding in the rain. We went up Constitution Hill, where we went up there. And this big buck was up there looking at us like, those fools. And all of you are great people to be around. Thank you.
Alan, talking about the early tours, something I thought about the other day was that the early bike club tours were, as Nancy mentioned, the ones down in San Luis Obispo, all of them were camping. And once in a while we'd stay in a hotel, or when the campground got underwater, we'd go to a hotel or something. Now, the tours, nobody would think about doing a camping tour now. I mean, I hope people do in the future, but the ones I've been on, the last 5 or 10 or something like that, have all been hotel tours. So it's kind of the maturity of the club.
Yeah, I think so.
More ways than one.
I'll share one more thing. Lee and I retired in 1991. We bought a nice sized motorhome, and we have had wonderful, wonderful memories and wonderful, wonderful trips. One of my favorite memories, we did the Alcan Highway in a motorhome, of course. We were in Canada at one of the stops. A young man was sitting there with his bicycle. We asked him what the problem was. Naturally, we saw somebody with a problem with a bicycle, we would stop and chat. He said he'd ordered a part and he was waiting for the part to come into the local town, but no one would take him from this particular place into town to get his bicycle part so it could be repaired. Okay, we disconnected our little car behind the motorhome, took the young man into several miles, not 20 miles, to the local bicycle shop, got the part, came back, and my husband repaired his bicycle. We've had a lot of fun with the motorhome these last years. We've been very, very blessed to have good health. My husband now has Parkinson's in the last stages. He would love to have been here. I would love to have had him. He thoroughly loved working on bikes. I thoroughly loved selling bikes. And I truly could not sell you a bicycle today because, let's face it, they've changed.
Still on 2 wheels.
Oh, Helen did want to mention that she's again going to do a walk for Parkinson's, I probably don't have this right, on October 10th, which I remember that date after she told it to me a couple of hours ago because that's the weekend before the Fall Central, whatever it is that I'm working. And also 1 week after my son's getting married, but busy October for me. So she would like help as far as people coming over and either walking or riding their bikes over there to the course marshals, right?
No.
No.
What I would really like for you to do is to ride your bike as a kind of a pre-ride for the Foxy Fall Century. We are having a fundraising walk for MS and Parkinson's at Yolo County Fair, October 10th. You start at 9 o'clock. We can have serious walkers, we can have fun walkers, you can bring your children, we'll have clowns and balloons, and there will be food from different places. We'll have Dutch Brother coffee. It's a fun event. It's not a hard walk. You can walk, sit down, continue to walk, or you can be serious and walk. Maybe bring a little donation.
Okay. So, anybody else? Last words? Larry? Last words? All right, well, thank you very much for being an audience and asking questions.